I know you pitched in several different continents, correct?
Yeah, I've actually pitched on all six, so I'm working
Oh,
on.
okay. You've been around then.
Yeah, I got some buddies. We're talking about going to Antarctica someday. So
Yeah, just one game of scrub so you can knock them all off. Yeah.
I think there's an army base that has a softball field, so maybe we can get a game going or something. But
hey, everybody, this is Greg Zahn.
This is Anthony Telford.
You're listening to The Walk-Off with Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
yeah, Geoff Freeborn here from Sidearm Nation, and you're listening to The Walk-Off.
Thrilled to be joined by the founder of Sidearm Nation, local area scout for the Baltimore Orioles, and former professional baseball player, Geoff Freeborn. Thanks so much for joining us, and welcome to The Walk-Off, man.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah, glad you're taking the time, buddy. I am super excited to talk sidearm and submarine pitching with you. Honestly, I've been obsessed with it since I was a kid because it was such a weird, wild delivery that you saw so rarely.
Yep.
So let's start with your career. Okay. I know that you made the transition from traditional pitching to sidearm. What was it that kind of brought that about for you?
So honestly, it was my first season with the Vipers. I had a very average first half. I was kind of a poo throwing lefty. I had some arm problems. I was, 84, 86, but kind of had a 6 ERA, but I was kind of the token local rookie guy that they kind of kept on because they had to keep 5 rookies, right? But the manager, Mike Bush, called me in kind of halfway through the season. I thought I was getting released, honestly. And
you actually thought they were cutting you?
Yeah. Yeah. When he called me in the office, I thought I was getting cut. But he's the one that suggested, hey, have you ever thought about dropping down? You've really got nothing to lose. Indirectly, he said he wasn't releasing me, but
yeah,
I could see
had you ever kind of thrown sidearm before this?
Honestly, I would do it a couple times. I remember doing it when I played in Melville in the Wimble, just the odd time to a lefty. Probably maybe only did it maybe half a dozen times in my career, but every time I did it, it worked. And I probably wish I would have done it more in college, but easier said than done looking back. But I honestly, it was a weird, basically that day he said, try dropping down. I went to the outfield, did some flat ground stuff. Our closer, John Huizinga, was a sidearm pitcher, kind of showed me some stuff. And
so you did have a guy who had kind of gone through this before. So you did have someone kind of showing you the ropes.
Yeah, our closer at the time in Calgary, John Huizinga, was a sidearm guy. So he kind of showed me some stuff, and I felt natural. It didn't hurt my shoulder as much. And Bush had me throw a bullpen that day, and it actually felt good. And he literally threw me in the game that day.
Really?
Yeah. And I got my first ever professional win that day. I came in the 8th inning, and it was weird. I faced the same hitters 2 days before. It was the 3, 4, 5 hitters, lefty, righty, lefty. And, I think it was double, walk, single, and then I faced the same it was the same 3 guys, and got strikeout, ground ball, strikeout, and you could even tell just some of the it was just a different reaction. And obviously not a normal story. I just kind of picked up on it quick, and a year later I was an all-star in the Northern League, so it was kind of a quick transition for me. So
That sold you on the transition then, eh?
It made baseball fun again too for me. I hurt my shoulder in college, and it just was never the same since.
So did you find that it did help with the shoulder pain then? Okay.
At least honestly for a couple years. It started to kind of come back a little bit, just wear and tear. But for the first couple years I dropped down, it just felt more natural from there. And your shoulder's actually designed to throw underhand. That's why softball pitchers can throw a
ridiculous speed.
Yeah. And just throw all weekend in a weird way, right? Whereas baseball, your shoulder, you're doing something that it's not designed to do. So it did feel a bit more comfortable from there. And like I said, I wish I would have done it earlier, but oh well.
So how did Sidearm Nation come about then? And maybe if you, for the listeners, kind of give a rundown of what exactly it is and what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess after I stopped playing baseball, I kind of took a couple years off. I just, I actually got into long drive golf. I found out I can hit a ball far, and kind of got my mind off of baseball, I guess, in a weird way. But I mean, back in my mind, baseball's always been my first love, and I guess when I dropped down, I was fortunate enough to have a teammate that was a sidearm guy. But even just doing some research online myself, there wasn't much on it, and that's kind of where the idea came from. And it's kind of been maybe a half effort the past, just with still coaching and trying to balance
Mhm.
everything out, but definitely in a weird way this year's kind of given me some time to focus on it and kind of launching some stuff in the new year. And but in a way, like, we've done camps the past kind of 5 years. We've done camps in the States, Canada,
And this is
on.
specifically targeted at sidearming. And so, do you have fellow sidearm coaches and stuff like that that run this with you?
Yep. So we've gone all over the states, and I've kind of got a little market of kind of former pros in the area, and they're all on board. That's the fun thing. As soon as they hear there's a sidearm camp in town, they're like, "Oh yeah, I'd love to coach. You don't even have to pay me, but I do, obviously." But like, they're just all on board and love it, and just to see like the group of kids, like, it's in a weird way, it's almost like an AA meeting. Like, they're like, we do intros and stuff too, and like, you can tell at the beginning of the camp they kind of have their head down and like, yeah, I'm a sidearm pitcher. But then after, like, the weekend, like, you can tell, like it's just seeing other sidearm pitchers. And we had Ryan Thompson on the Rays at our camp in December, and
Yeah.
just learning from, Randy Choate was at a camp, and like, Chad Bradford's being an instructor at one of my camps. So just to see some of those guys make it to the bigs because of a pretty drastic change, you can definitely see kind of the confidence in a lot of pitchers after the
I
camp.
like that you say it's almost like an AA
It,
support group.
it no, it in a weird way it kind of is.
Because, and let me, now I'm guessing here, but you can kind of direct me on the right path here. A lot of that has to do with the fact that if you're going to adopt the sidearm way of throwing, it's almost a last ditch effort, correct? Is that
Yeah.
sort of the idea behind it? Yeah.
Yep. And honestly, all the guys I've interviewed and stuff too, they wouldn't have made it to AAA or the bigs if they didn't drop down in college or even high school. Like, it's a very, very last resort. A few guys will maybe drop down just to mix up their arm slot and maybe kind of be
Right.
25%. But like, guys that are kind of doing it full on, it's not like they started necessarily throwing like that in high school. But
Now, this may be a little bit ignorant, but with sidearm pitching, it is not an actual pitch. It's just a way of pitching, correct? So,
yeah.
can you still throw your fastball and changeup and all of that sort of stuff sidearm? Or are there pitches that you can't throw sidearm?
Obviously, it's not a curveball, right? It's a slider.
Okay.
It's just, you're not going to get that 12-6 from a lower arm slot. So it's a slider. There's guys that have thrown like a forkball, a splitty from down there, or knuckleball. But I mean, the three main pitches are sinker, slider, and changeup. But
Right.
most sidearm guys, it's kind of that sinker slider.
Sinker
Um,
slider and power is not something a sidearmer is even going for, correct? Like, what is the goal when you're on the mound as a sidearm pitcher? What is the perfect scenario, the perfect pitch you're going for?
Honestly, it's deception and movement, and being creative too, right? Like, just mixing up the hitter's timing. As a hitter, you're basically trained to hit pitchers over the top. Coaches are throwing BP, always just L screen, same arm slot over the top. So a lot of hitters, when they see a guy from sidearm submarine, they're not used to it, right? So
Hmm.
it's not necessarily about velocity, and that's where, even through the site, I get a lot of questions. How do I gain more velocity from there? But I mean, obviously, velocity is important in today's baseball world.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, as a scout, I'm learning that, right? But it's knowing, even myself, I was better 82, 84 from down there, but I could get up to 88, but it
Right.
would be flat and more hittable at 88. So I mean, it's tough. Some guys, I mean, it's kind of an ego thing. You want to throw hard, but it's not necessarily going to be about that from there, right? I mean, there's a reason why you've dropped down, and kind of a lot of guys just maybe struggle with that once they've dropped down, and it's not about velo. So
Yeah, I know that submarine guys. So before I get into this next question, sorry.
Mhm,
Is one of the reasons that you would go submarine, like obviously you're trying to affect timing.
mhm.
Is that why some of the guys have these big extravagant windups when it comes to the submarine pitchers? Like some of those guys, it just like it's what always drew me towards him as a kid, right? Is I was like, it looks crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I mean, Dan Quisenberry back in the
Yeah.
day, like, I mean, he was only like 80, 84 back then, but just obviously the lower you get, you know, your body, hips and stuff, you literally can't throw as hard. But
Mhm.
in a weird way, like 84 from down there at Submarine, it's actually from a hitter's perspective, it's like 94, 95. So that's where the velocity readings, it's more kind of that hitter's perspective, how he sees it.
It just
Um,
feels like the ball's on you faster, eh?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, some of those crazy windups, that's just how they generate their velo in their own way. And it's just being unique. And that's the fun thing too at all the camps. Every kid has their own unique delivery and it's definitely fun to watch. So
Unique is a great word. That's exactly what it is. There's a
we're all,
uniqueness to
yeah,
it that, yeah.
yeah.
Now, there is there is sort of a stigma behind the submarine pitchers that they're a bullpen guy, they're a
Mhm,
mid-inning guy, they're a bit
mhm.
of a one-trick pony. And they even touch on this in Moneyball, right? When they're talking about Chad Bradford and how he was never really given a chance just because he looked so odd pitching.
Yeah.
Is this a stigma that still exists in baseball today? Has it dissipated a little in time, or is this still something baseball's still trying to get over?
It'll probably be, I mean, that's the thing, right? Like kind of that one time through the order, or honestly, sometimes even just myself, like for one inning and just kind of letting it go for an inning and being that kind of deceptive for one time through. But it's probably better off just being three or four batters in a way. Some of that can be honestly endurance. I mean, there's some guys that have started from down there, you know, young Kim started a little
Yep.
bit. And it is just that, I mean, a lot of guys, I'd rather have two good pitches, fastball, slider, and be really good with those two pitches than, you know, not many sidearm guys are going to have three or four pitches to really be an effective starter. Not saying that that's not the case, but you do get pigeonholed. Even myself, I was kind of a lefty guy.
Yeah.
I could get righties out though. That's kind of maybe where my frustration, you know, it happened. Like I was even told by righties they didn't like facing me. It was just a different look. They weren't used to
Yeah.
it. But I kind of got pigeonholed as the lefty guy. And
Well, you see that even with every pitcher, right? The righty lefty split. A guy
yeah,
who's pitches both sides really well, but still kind of gets pigeonholed as no,
yeah.
you're pitching against one or the other. Yeah.
And I don't mind that new rule in a weird way, like that three batter rule. It does maybe kind of eliminate some of that stuff. I know there was
Hmm.
talk, like, you know, I mean, we're kind of called loogies, right? So lefty one out guy. But it does give us a chance to face righties or, you know, face three batters and see what you can do.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
and
I'm curious, and I know you kind of brought it up about how you were suffering from some shoulder problems, and then you went to a lower arm slot, started pitching sidearm, and it helped take the pain away. Is this something that is universal across the game? Like, do you kind of when you see somebody struggling with shoulder problems that you're like, maybe you're done, but maybe you're not. Maybe you should try sidearm. Is this advice you give to people?
like you said, kind of a last resort too, right? I mean, but definitely a lot of the guys I've interviewed, that kind of seems to be a common theme too, right? Or just some shoulder, or maybe not throwing very well either, right? Or just kind of
Right.
see the writing on the wall, or the number 10 guy in the pen. I mean, I mean, maybe I'm more aware of it now, obviously with the site, but definitely more colleges are recruiting high school guys instead of having to drop down a guy in college that's struggling. So there's
Right.
definitely more high school guys that are throwing like that already and getting recruited more and more. And even in Major League Baseball, like, you know, obviously the draft was smaller this year, but in previous years, there was more sidearm submarine guys getting drafted, even if it was the later rounds, but just realizing the importance of having those guys, you know, in the pen. And if they're already throwing like that in college, don't have to drop down a guy in pro ball. So it's definitely, I think more and more teams are realizing it's.
Well, there is a deception to it, right? Like I can only imagine facing an Aroldis Chapman and then the next guy you face. Yeah, like it would just be night and day, right?
I wouldn't even want to face Chapman.
None of us would. As for strength and conditioning, is it a little different as a sidearm pitcher? Like, what do you do for arm strength to make sure that the guys that you're sending out there are still as in good a condition as they can be?
Definitely, even, I mean, obviously pitching in general, but I think even a little more core strength is needed, especially like your lower back. It's just, it does, to create that lower arm slot, it is kind of bending at the waist to create that lower arm slot and getting into some unnatural positions. And so like core is even maybe more important for a sidearm pitcher. Obviously legs important for whatever arm slot, but I do think lower back takes a little bit extra toll, especially the lower you get. Hey, so
yeah,
I think that's definitely important.
That's interesting that the focus does kind of shift a little bit when you're in preparation mode for as a sidearm pitcher. And I know you kind of touched on this too, just the support group aspect of it. When you made the switch, I mean, that's great. You had the closer with you there who had done it before. Was there any sort of support, or did you kind of need to, besides just picking your teammate's brain, did you deep dive into it a little bit? Like, did you need to kind of search out that sort of help?
Yeah, I kind of probably Googled the world of sidearm submarine pitchers. And that's where I kind of found out a lot of the guys I've interviewed for the site and former, big leaguers, pro guys, but I kind of just did a lot of learning on my own and reading stories of indie ball guys that made the bigs after dropping down, and kind of gave me some hope there, but just kind of was able to do my own. Yeah, I kind of did on my own, and went to Australia to play winter ball my first year dropping down. So that I actually started in Australia, and I sidearm submarine. I just started, but it gave me kind of 6-7 innings just to fool around with it for a winter, and came back strong that next year. And like I said, I made the All-Star game, but if I didn't go to Australia that winter, I probably wouldn't have. So it just kind of gave me a winter to fool around with different grips and try some different pitches, and came back pretty strong after that. So I definitely helped go in Australia.
That's great. I know you pitched in several different continents, correct?
Yeah, I've actually pitched on all 6, so I'm working.
Oh, okay. You've been around then.
Yeah, I got some buddies. We're talking about going to Antarctica someday. So
yeah, just one game of scrub so you can knock them all off. Yeah.
I think there's an army base that has a softball field, so maybe we can get a game going or something. But
where was the most I guess what I'm asking is culture shock. Where did you play that you were the most like, wow, I am really a fish out of water here?
Probably Colombia.
Eh?
Colombia. I mean, interesting. Like, they love baseball. It's a great league. Actually, it's growing. It's a very, Edgar Renteria was, playing, Orlando Cabrera. They're kind of owning the league now, and Colombia's growing in baseball. Like Julio Teheran, I'm probably saying his last name, but he was like a young 17-year-old back then. Kelly was going to be good, but probably it's more the fans though that was a shock, like just how passionate they are. Like, that's pretty common in winter ball. Like, if you're not doing well, like they're gonna let you know.
Yeah.
I blew the save my first outing, and they let me know. Yeah. But fun. I mean, the weird thing is, like, my next 9 outings, I went 9 innings, didn't give up a hit. I was throwing well, basically threw a no-hitter in 9 combined outings, but they remembered that first game that I gave up 3 runs and one.
A little bit of Yankee type fans in Colombia, eh?
Walking around like, hey, like, I'm throwing well now. You could pull.
You can stop booing. Yeah.
Didn't quite happen, but but they're passionate. Like, they're like, and that's where too, like, even in Calgary, some games, they're watching the game but not necessarily into it. Whereas in Colombia, they're watching everything loud, and
that's great. That's great. So for Sidearm Nation, I know they always talk about with knuckleballers that
Mhm.
there's like a brotherhood amongst them. Have you found that when you've kind of started putting Sidearm Nation together, that it has created the same sort of camaraderie between sidearmers?
Yeah, and pretty cool to connect with current big
Because
leaguers.
there wasn't a platform like this before, right?
No, no, and that's been the fun part. And like I said, I've been trying to juggle a couple things when I was the head coach at UFC, and still trying to do Sidearm Nation on the side. But definitely a very unique niche community, and just to see kind of, like even Ryan Thompson sent me a picture, like him and Aaron Loop kind of hanging out with the shirt on, Sidearm Nation shirt on, like, just to see some of that
Awesome.
stuff, like kind of very unique. Hey, so it's been cool.
Yeah, that's really cool that that's kind of your brainchild too. You got to be proud about that. That's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, like I said, I made some mistakes with it, but at the same time, I know a lot of people get ideas in their head, but I actually went with it, right? And
Yeah.
I definitely, I guess in a way, probably the same thing when I dropped down sidearm pitching, right? Kind of just like,
Yeah.
all right, let's do this, and kind of did the same thing when I started Sidearm Nation. So it's been
Yeah,
fun.
that's great, man. That's awesome. Uh, Tell me a little bit about your scouting role with the Baltimore Orioles. Are you their sidearm guy, or are you kind of just the area in general?
Kind of like that's where they're, using me to kind of help out scout. It's going to be more like indie ball guys that are maybe sidearm guys, and like, even just, hey, here's a guy, like take a look at him, and, looking at some video. The draft this year, like I said, was a little bit smaller. It's going to maybe be 20 rounds, I think, next year. But
Yeah.
yeah, if there's a couple sidearm guys, they'll send me some video to take a look at. And so from that standpoint, it's been an awesome organization to be with. They're open to sidearm guys. They had four
Darren
guys.
O'Day. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
like
mean,
that a couple years ago, they had Darren O'Day, Michael Givens,
yeah,
Donnie
they had a
Hart.
few.
They had like four guys in the pen, so they definitely see the value in them. So.
I hated O'Day. That's the Blue Jays fan in me coming out. It wasn't so much him as a pitcher. It was how well he pitched that bothered me. But yeah.
Yep.
Is the fact that they've had success with sidearm guys a reason why that they're open to this sort of pitcher? Like, I know that there's a lot of organizations that aren't into taking a look at them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then they're definitely in a rebuilding stage.
Yeah.
Maybe longer than we'll see. But they're open to, like, that's where, even if it's just a cheaper sign, and if a guy is willing to put in the work, and just to, Darren O'Day is a good example. He was a non-drafted free agent, and look at his career, right? So they definitely, obviously sidearm submarine guys aren't necessarily going to be a first round draft pick. So if they can save money on a guy that can
Put up the same numbers as someone else, yeah.
Perfect, right?
So when you're scouting, what are you looking for in youth development? Like, what are you looking for in a guy?
Yeah, I mean, some of it, like, that's the tricky thing, right? Like, I'm still learning too, right? Like, you're never gonna get, hurt from your boss if you turn in a guy throwing 95 and 6'5", 200 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the easy part about scouting. And if he flakes in the minors, like, some of that you can't predict. I mean, hopefully, like, kind of learning how to look a little bit on the off-field stuff. It's something I wish I maybe would have learned a little bit more too. But like, scouts actually want to see you fail.
Right.
It's easy to scout a guy if he's throwing a no-hitter, or if he's 4 for 4 with 4 home runs, right? I mean, that's the easy part of scouting. But it's when he's kind of having a bad day and maybe struggling on the mound.
So what are you looking for then when they're failing? You're just looking at how they deal with that?
Yeah, body language.
Right.
How they, if a shortstop makes an error, is he going to be a douchebag to his teammates, right? Like, just little things like that. Or when he's going into the dugout, just how he handles himself. If he's throwing his glove, like, that's probably a guy, just that kind of cancerous teammate that a lot of programs just don't want to deal with. I mean, you can have all the talent, but yeah, if like I said, if you're going to be kind of a douchebag to your teammates, I mean, there's a reason why guys.
There's probably another guy with the same amount of talent out there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many guys playing baseball. I mean, just it makes it easy just to scratch someone off if you kind of see that. I mean, you're not, like I said, you're not going to be throwing a no-hitter every game, and it's just to see how you react. So that's kind of the thing I've been learning about the scouting world a little bit. I mean, I kind of always knew that, but just maybe seeing it now on the other side. So, but trying to figure, like, I mean, that's where like the scout that signed Jose Altuve, right? Like, obviously a gamble, but just to see like that, just something in a guy that maybe not everyone else would.
Right.
So, and that's where the sidearm submarine, obviously I have a passion for that. So
of course. And I'm curious then, when, as someone yourself who was kind of told by your manager, you're like, he was kind of like, change your slot or find a new thing you're doing with your life. At what point when you're viewing a pitcher, do you think to yourself, okay, it might be time for this last ditch effort as a submarine guy? Like when is it that you kind of make that suggestion to them?
Yeah, I mean, we dropped down a couple guys at the UFC. One guy was a senior. It was his last year, and kind of same thing. Why not? And kind of was struggling his first 3 years. So, dropped down a lefty that probably wouldn't have pitched and ended up pitching a little bit more than he would have. So kind of bought into it. So, it's kind of one of those things. I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? I'm not going to drop down a guy like number one or Garrett Cole, right? I mean, there's no point of dropping him down. But if it's a college guy that, maybe a mop-up guy and just isn't pitching that much, I think it can be a combo of the player initiating it or the coach initiating it. I think the player that maybe buys into it more a little bit tends to maybe be a little more successful, but sometimes needs a little nudge from his coach. And hey, this could be your ticket to maybe playing in the WCBL, at least for some local guys, right? Or maybe, there's a couple of high school kids even in the area that have dropped down, and the one guy, that was his ticket to play college baseball. So just realizing and maybe being realistic with some of your baseball goals. And if it's not getting you there over the top, why not? You got nothing to lose. So
100%.
Some guys buy into that, some guys don't, though. That's the tricky thing too. And if they don't buy into it,
if they don't buy in, they don't buy in, right?
It's not going to work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you an Alberta boy?
Yep.
Yeah. Where are you from?
Calgary.
Okay, so you are from Calgary. That's great.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the sort of advancements that Alberta baseball has made over the last decade? Because I know that they are substantial.
Yep. It's a weird baseball province. Sometimes personally a little frustrating, just maybe too fractured in Alberta. With Babe Ruth, American Legion, Baseball Canada, all the different academies. I wish it could be like quadrant hockey almost, or even in Calgary, like just a little more, even like BC has the Premier League, just a little more. And there's talk, I think there's a group that's trying to start an Alberta Premier League, and just a little more
to kind of unify it, right? That's kind of the problem, is it's broken up a little bit. Yeah.
And honestly, that's where Alberta, even, unfortunately in the Canada Cup last year, they finished 9th out of 10, and kind of embarrassing for a province that has 2 academies or high-end academies, and
is producing a lot of talent. I didn't know that.
A lot of talent, but it just kind of shows you how fractured it is a little bit, unfortunately, and just too many people not getting along, and just a weird province from that standpoint. But there's some great coaches in the province and great talent, great players. It's just some of the politics, I guess, behind the scenes stuff is a little annoying, but but it has
made a lot of progress in the last 10 years, though.
Oh yeah, and absolutely. Like the Dogs program has been, pretty
highly touted.
And Vauxhall, Les has done a good job there, and lots of good players playing college ball, and obviously Mr. Soroka, making the Braves, and that'll help.
Our pride and joy, right?
Yeah, and he's an awesome kid. He's been an instructor too at a couple local camps for me, and good head on his shoulders and wants to give back. And
Yeah.
that'll definitely help, I think, kids growing, seeing if, he can make it, and that was kind of maybe like a Ritzma for me, growing up. And so hopefully for some younger kids, seeing stroke as success will help for sure.
That's awesome. So our good mutual buddy and friend of the show, Trevor Freeman.
Yep.
I was picking his brain about non-baseball stuff that we could talk about briefly. And one thing he brought up was how close and how awesome your relationship with your brother Jeremy is, and how he's kind of been an inspiration to you throughout your career and your life in general. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so my brother, so Jeremy's got cerebral palsy. Very like is the right side of his body, just not as functioning, but very smart. Loves sports, 2 degrees, does a lot of sports writing online, but definitely helped me. I probably wouldn't have got as far as it was for baseball if it wasn't for my brother. I think in a way, made me work harder, knowing how fortunate I was to have my body, and being able to use it. And I do think that definitely helped me get where I did with baseball. And he's always been a big fan of me and coming up to my games, and he can tell me my stats box score from when I was 12, and I've forgotten some of those games obviously,
Yeah.
but he can remember the batters I faced, and it's impressive. So
Just kind of gave you some perspective, eh?
yeah, and definitely, like I said, very fortunate to be able to play baseball, whereas he never did, right? So I definitely didn't take things for granted.
Yeah. That's awesome, Geoff. Before we let you go here, and I do want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us. I love talking baseball, and this has been very enjoyable. Did you have anything coming up with Sidearm Nation, or anything you wanted to plug or promote?
Yeah, so like I said, I'm going to be launching some stuff in the new year. I mean, actually, one of them, I have always wanted to do a podcast, just a different way to do the interviews. And I think with the connections I have, I can get some pretty cool guests, not just sidearm guys, but even former teammates and stuff too. And it's something I was going to maybe do before, but I just, like I said, once I kind of was the head coach at the University of Calgary, trying to juggle too much, right? And
a pandemic kind of gives you some time, eh?
well, yeah, again, a weird way, like it has been just nice probably to have a little break from baseball. We still had some baseball this year, but just, I mean, for me with Sidearm Nation, I guess it just did give me some time to, all right, I guess I can work on it. Or like I said, trying to balance too much, just probably working myself to death. So but in a way, I'm going to be launching to like kind of a better video ebook, a little bit more just information for sidearm submarine guys, and kind of, collaborated with a few guys with that. And it's kind of been a project in the works too that I just wasn't able to do. And and kind of looking forward to just focusing more on Sidearm Nation. So
Yeah, man, do it. That's great. I know the whole reason that Adam and I decided to do this podcast is we kind of hit June in the pandemic. We're both comics, right? So I haven't been able to do what I do for a while now. So It was kind of a nice way to fill some time and put some passion into something I really love that's a different angle. So yeah, man, enjoy that. Do that. That's great.
Yeah, I kind of, unfortunately, like I got stuck, right? It was almost like a guaranteed paycheck coaching every month, right? And I mean, I enjoyed it, but at the same time, it wasn't, I didn't start the University of Calgary baseball program, right? I started Sidearm Nation, and I'd rather put my time and effort into that than the program that wasn't necessarily mine. And it's going to be just fine without me, right? Like don't need me, right? Like, I mean, in a weird, like it was fun to help kind of try and change some of the program there, but at the same time, it's not my.
That's great, man. Congratulations. That's awesome. No, go ahead. Sorry.
No, definitely, like, appreciate having me on. I definitely love chatting baseball, and
Yeah, this was fun, buddy. Before I let you go, could you do me a favor? Would you be able to say, this is Geoff Freeborn with Sidearm Nation. You're listening to Adam Mack and Scott Belford on the walk-off.
Yeah, absolutely. This is Geoff Freeborn from Sidearm Nation. You're listening to the walk-off.
Nailed it. I love
Maybe
it.
not quite.
No, it's fine. It's fine. We can make that work. Do you want to give her one more go here? With Scott Belford and Adam Mack.
With Scott Belford and Adam Mack. Okay.
Belford.
Belford?
Ring a bell. Belford. Like
Belford.
like a bell in the car. Yeah.
Should I write this down?
We've got you saying you're listening to the walk-off. So if you mess this up, it's about as low pressure as you can get.
Yeah, Geoff Freeborn here from Sidearm Nation, and you're listening to the walk-off with Adam Mack and Scott Belford.
Nailed it.
Close.
You nailed it, buddy. That's perfect.
Yeah, I'm definitely a pen and paper guy.
Me too. No, it's all good, man. It's all good.